Welcome to our White Towel panel videos. Remind you can also subscribe to our podcast through Apple Podcasts and get all this great content every week. I'll also give you a reminder of our lovely posters that we have here done in conjunction with the Canucks, part of their 50th anniversary series. Look on our website for details on how you can buy these posters. They have autograph signings, all part of this season, gentlemen. And what a season it's turning out to be. Earlier, a couple weeks ago, we talked about this massive road trip that the Canucks were going to go on and how that would really tell us what they are. Are we any closer to knowing what they are, Ed? You were on part of the road trip.
Yeah, actually, I think so. I think when you take out the wide-angle lens and look at the totality of this season, it's almost playing out according to form. It's just those sort of week-in, week-out developments. I think that's where people get a little confused because they think, geez, we got a handle on it. This team is really good. Oh, no, they're really bad. They've got defensive problems. No, they're an offensive juggernaut. No, they're this, they're that. But, I go back to what most people thought at the start of the season. They're going to be there. They're going to play meaningful games in March. Now, do they have enough to make the playoffs? I'm still skeptical about that, but I think they've made significant improvements this year, and it's kind of bearing out on the ice.
Patrick, this team is fourth in the NHL right now in goals scored. How much is that a part of the identity of this team? And did we expect this team to have such balanced scoring? And I think if you looked at it at the start of the year and said they'd be where they are, you might think that Pettersson and Besser were having all-world seasons.
I think that the goals clearly is a strength. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I've lost count. It was 10 games now they've scored 5 goals, something like that. This is a team that has offense that makes it work, obviously driven a lot by the power play. And thank goodness for that, because if you are going to make the playoffs, you need to have good special teams, and we've seen that. The scoring balance has been, I think, a bit of a surprise. I think we looked at that lineup. We knew that Pettersson, obviously feeling fresh, was probably going to have a good year. That Brock Besser, feeling fit and healthy, hoped to have a good year. They're both having great years. Quinn Hughes, we figured, he could bring something. I think he's been better almost than expected. And then, you looked at sort of the second tier wingers, and there's a lot of guys that you're sort of like, are these guys really second line wingers? Are these more kind of really, the new wave of kind of third line true depth scorers, guys that can chip in for 12 goals but not get you 20? Well, they've got a bunch of guys that are on pace to score 20 goals, and that to me shows that this is not only a team that's been sort of well conceived in terms of how they're trying to score goals, but they're actually getting it done.
Ed, it's funny you talk about the wider angle lens of the season. I think when you look at that road trip, it really was indicative of how it's gone. People think this team's better than they are, and then they absolutely freak out. Last night I thought it was funny against Ottawa. They get the big lead, and all of a sudden, a goal goes in, then another one which ended up being ruled out, but people were sort of hearkening back to Pittsburgh, hearkening back to Washington. Are those concerns, or are these great learning steps that this team has to take? Yeah,
it probably happened maybe a few too many times, and they do seem to go through stretches where they have trouble defending. I think their goaltending has masked a lot of their defensive deficiencies so far this season. When I look back on the season, the one thing I'm a little troubled by is there's too many games where they won because they've had the better goaltender. I'm not saying the goalie's actually flat out stolen the game, but they've had the better guy, and that was certainly the case last night. For me, Ottawa was the better team for about 40 minutes of that game last night, but you look at this 5-2, they dominated. Well, not really. Their goalie made some saves. Anders Nielsen had a tough time, obviously, in the first period. Very similar in Edmonton on Saturday night. Everybody was crowing about that game. Big 5-2 win on the road, and they were full value in the third period. But the fact of the matter was, Mike Smith had a really rough game, and Markstrom made the stops he had to. And again, you look and it's 5-2, full value for them, and you're going to need goaltending. But I'm just not sure if that's sustainable over the length of the season. I think I think they've got to tighten up their team game.
It's a difference in the end between being sort of a team that's in the mix to make the playoffs and being elite. I mean, you need goaltending, and thank goodness they've had it, right? I mean, if they didn't have the goaltending, they could score all the goals they want, but it wouldn't matter.
So where do you see the next 2 weeks for this team?
This is imperative. I mean, they had 17 of the first 27 on the road. Now they're at home for. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on the numbers, but I know it's for most of this month. There's a 2-game roadie, and that's it. So to me, they've got to be playing 650, 700 hockey at home. And then that really changes a lot of things in their season going into the second half.
You look at how that road trip went, but in the end it was a 500 trip. They sort of survived November. But they've got all these games at home. They've got a lot of matchups against teams that they're in the mix with. And the results need to come because if they can get to Christmas and they're sitting sort of upper 40s in terms of points, they're in a good position to go into the stretch run.
Yeah, it's great storylines for you guys to write about. You can follow them all year at theprovince.com, vancouversun.com. Again, subscribe to our podcast through Apple Podcasts. It's called The White Towel. And get our lovely posters if you visit our website. Thanks for watching, everyone.